The Jersey Swap podcast is sponsored by Apollo Home. Folks, it's never too late to get your furnace checked out by Apollo Home, or if you're ready for spring, give them a call and they can look at your air conditioner to make sure you're ready for the warmer weather. For a limited time, take advantage of their spring deal, a new AC unit for as low as $99 per month. Stay cold when it's hot, stay hot when it's cold with Apollo Home. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Jersey Swap podcast. We're going to try another early morning recording. Hope everybody's got their coffee. I think you kind of need it today. And I hope you're good with thrill rides because this season seems to have been a lot of ups and downs, been nothing but downs the past 7 days. Let's see how this roller coaster can be kept on the tracks with this weekend's opponent. The Orange and Blue have one more match before the short international break, and that will take care of our home slate against Canadian teams with the regular season matchup against CF Montreal. Let's hope this one goes better than the 1-0 loss to Toronto a few weeks ago. I'm sure we'll get through it somehow. With us to talk about Club de Foot is Elias Grigoriadis from the Ball is Round podcast. Let me bring him onto the stage right now. How you doing this morning, Elias?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I'm very excited. Anytime I get the chance to talk about the club, talk about some MLS, it's a good morning.
Oh yeah, it's a great morning. I mean, TGIF. Everybody should be appreciating the coffee this morning, at least to get us through the next 24 hours. Anyways, before I take my step here, I just wanted to welcome you to the show. Maybe it's been a while, so maybe reintroduce your podcast if you could. And it's great to have you once again on the show.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me. Yeah, we're the Balls Round, myself and Andy Coronado. We're live every Monday at 7 p.m. and we cover not just CF Montreal now, but all three of Montreal's professional football clubs. We have the Roses from the Northern Super League, the first Canadian women's league ever, and we also have Supra, the FC Supra, that are back from before the Montreal Impact. So back in the 80s. They're back and they're playing in the Canadian Premier League. And of course, we also cover both national teams. And, with the World Cup with both World Cups coming up over the next year and a half, it's going to be very exciting. And yeah, it's a whole lot of soccer. We try and cram into an hour to an hour and a half every week, but we manage. And it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that we can get up to see a few Canadian Premier League games up there. Halifax is my team. So I would definitely go
They
up
still
there.
have one of my favorite stadiums in the country. It's such a creative and fun stadium, and the atmosphere rocks. So good pick.
Yeah, and there's just something about like a league to call your own.
Yeah.
I get vibes of USL sometimes when I watch it, but then I get vibes of just its own entity altogether. So I hope to be
Yeah,
up
I
there
think they've done a
soon.
good job of like carving out their own little cultural niche at least. And I think that a lot of the clubs have done a very good job at capturing the community aspect of what football is, right? And again, MLS is on a grander stage and it's not necessarily as community oriented, even though they do have community, outreach. But you take the Super, for example, when they've committed to only using players from or developed in Quebec or that have, strong ties to Quebec football. And it's a covenant with the province itself. And Quebec has been for the longest time one of the largest untapped talent pools on the
Mhm.
continent, and so giving them a really good opportunity to kind of exist in a professional environment outside of CF Montreal, because again, CF Montreal can't catch everything. It's not
Mhm.
physically possible, right? um it's wonderful, and the environment and the atmosphere is already fantastic. And once this club starts really competing, it's going to be uh, really, can't miss football.
Yeah, I also can't wait to see really what that atmosphere looks like when the World Cup kicks into full gear. I mean, you're talking about players from the Quebec area and really all over the country. Canada's national team has really, I think, amped its talent pool quite a bit. We extended this olive branch to your rivals in Toronto, so we'll ask you your opinion. What are your thoughts on Canada's chances in the World Cup?
It really depends on this back line, because they have one of the strongest back lines. That not one of, they have the strongest back line they've ever had. The problem is all four of them are currently injured or on their way
Mhm.
back from injury. When you look at Alistair Johnson, Alfonso Davies, Derek Cornelius, and Moise Bombito, who are all now, you know, uh, really should be at the height of their powers, and they've been struggling with fitness over the last year. So they're all expected to be fit for the World Cup, but again, what is expected to be fit and also what level of match preparedness will they have is an entirely different question, which is kind of a shame because this really is a once in a lifetime opportunity
Mhm.
for both the national team and for Canada in general. So I hope that they're ready, and I think that's a huge part about how real their chances are. Jesse Marsh, has not been shy about the fact that he not just doesn't want to just qualify for the knockout stage. He wants to win the group. And I think
Mm.
they're in a group that is very winnable. But again, this back line is vitally important. And if they don't have it, then, Jesse Marsh has to completely change the way that he approaches the game. You don't have that safety net where you have people like Alfonso Davies and Moise Bombito that are just going to be the fastest players on the pitch on any pitch they play on. And
Mhm.
so it's going to be very curious to see, how they line up. They've got four friendlies before the World Cup. I'm going to two of them. There's one in
Mm.
Toronto next week, and that's going to be fun. And yeah, so there's a lot of question marks, but I think this team has the talent to absolutely win their group, and maybe not necessarily dark horse status, but could give some teams a headache.
Yeah, we'll see what the United States backline looks like too. I think as much maligned as the offense has been, I think having a strong defense tells you something about how far a team can go in this World Cup. And I'm hoping the likes of Miles Robinson gets a call somewhere there to maybe stand next to Chris Davies and Tim Ream, get a little bit of a pushback there, and certainly get our wings, I think, healthy as possible. Who knows if Serginho Dest is going to be available? But yeah, I think we both have the same sort of hopes. It's just going to be what it turns into when you have all the home cooking standing behind you.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go from country to club. I think we can talk about country next week when we see those friendlies in play. Let's move to CF Montreal.
Mhm.
Rewind a little bit, flashback to 2025, if you don't mind. 13th in the East. Um, uh, I don't want to bring up the Canadian Premier League, but you did lose to Forge FC in the Canadian Championships. You did knock out Toronto, though. There's got to be a little bit of pride there, I think.
Silver linings.
So
Yeah, it's
Um,
it-
the big question, though, I do want to have is that in midseason, Laurent Courtois was sacked, and Marco Donadel came on as the head coach and just had the interim tag removed. Looking at everything on the whole, do you feel this is a justified move to have Donadel as the head coach?
it's very tricky because again, this team committed to in July. This team came out and said, "Mea culpa." The offseason was a nightmare. We messed up. We're in a full scale rebuild now, right? Since 2022, they've been flirting with the word without actually saying it. They've been talking about preparatory seasons and working towards next year. They never said we're in a rebuild up
Mhm.
until we're coming up on almost a year now. Um, and so with that, there's going to naturally just be a lot of changes. That's the nature of a rebuild. And you want some level of consistency, at least in some part of it. And I think the head coaching position, if it's not glaringly, an issue, you should at least give them the benefit of the doubt. And I think Marco Donadel did enough to earn the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying, he's, oh my God, like for sure you can't get rid of him, right? But what he did was, despite the system being, a little bit inconsistent, he's gotten everyone to buy in to both him as a coach and him as a tactician. And so I think that alone gave him the benefit of the doubt because again, this is going to be a very turbulent time. You're going to need some consistent levels of leadership throughout the club, not just the players, but also the staff. And so I think he's done enough to earn, the interim tag being removed, but the rest is on him now. Again,
Mhm.
the team is marginally improved from last season. Now, can he show that marginal improvement? Can he again? I said at the beginning of the season, I think after seeing 4 games, it maintains. Right now, marginal improvement for me looks like competing for a playing spot.
Mhm.
I know it's not the most ambitious thing in the world, but it's baby steps, especially with the squad that they have now. Now, if they bring in some heavy hitters in the summer, then it's an entirely different conversation. But based on the group that they've got now, play in is both realistic and borderline optimistic about where this club should be headed in terms of their rebuild.
I think they've got some pieces in play. Let's sort of look at some of the moves that were made in the 2026 preseason. There were a lot of moves you guys made last year. I think just mostly to get a lot of the cargo moved off the ship. And there's a lot of subtractions that were made in the offseason. Take a look at some of the big options that were declined. Giacomo Veroni is gone. Bryce Duke is gone. Matthias Kokoro has eventually been bought out. He's now with Newell Old Boys. But also some big names were transferred as well. Dante Sealy to Colorado. Considering his performance down the stretch, I mean, Sealy gave you 7 goals over the last 10. Do you feel it was wise to deal him to Colorado? Was it strictly a payroll move, maybe?
It was really a shame to see Dante Sealy go because he won everybody over. I like Dante Sealy from the beginning, maybe not as a starter, but even coming off the bench, what he provided, especially for a guy that makes like 150 grand, you're not going to find that anywhere else, bang for buck in MLS. And it really just was a situation of it's 2.5 million in GAM.
Hmm.
It's kind of an offer you can't refuse,
Yeah.
right? And I think they kind of did a cost benefit analysis. Even at his best, Dante Sealy's probably not going to go for more than that. So it's a calculated, kind of a transfer, and they have Hennady Sinchuk, who is this 19-year-old up and coming winger who plays on the right. On top of that, and so competition is good and all, but maybe they want to feature him a little bit more now that he's taken that second season step, and he's more accustomed to life as an MLS player. But I really do think that it was more just yeah, we're not going to be in a position to get more money for Dante Sealy than what we're just being offered. And I think Colorado may have slightly overpaid, but
Mhm.
at the same time, I think that it's a logical move for CF Montreal. And as much as I personally love Dante Sealy and what he brought, especially towards the end of the season, sometimes that's the business.
Yeah, sometimes it is. I mean, it's a big chunk of change that you got from. I'm very jealous that you were able to squeeze 2 million out of someone who some people could consider being more of a bench player, but also getting the likes of Sinchuk. I mean, a 19-year-old winger. He's going to give you some performance, and he started the last game too. So it looks like already you're getting some bang for the buck.
Yeah, I mean he struggled with fitness throughout last season, so getting a consistent run in the team was a bit difficult. But this year he's put on some muscle.
Mm,
He's grown still, right? He's a teenager. He's still doing some physical growth, even though he's not necessarily getting taller. Just bodies develop, and he looks a lot more confident. He looks a lot more settled in his role and his standing in the club. And that game against Orlando City, despite the result not being what the club wanted, it was arguably Hennady Sinchuk's best game with the club since he got here. He was confident. He was taking people on. He was winning most of his duels. He, created some chances. And, there's some issues still in the middle of the park, but that right side right now is looking like a real offensive outlet, which is nice to see, given that the left side is also you got a designated player like Ivan Jaime, who is going to be hopefully causing problems on that other side as well. So you kind of get both wings, which is something the club hasn't had in forever.
yeah, this is a dangerous roster that I'm looking at in terms of how talented they can be in the future, the potential. There are a lot of young faces out there, but a lot of good additions too. I mean, I'm looking at some of the names here. Brian Vera transferred from RSL. Dagger Dan Thorelson, love that name. I've always appreciated anything with that crossed out O in there. From Orlando, Daniel Rios, journeyman from Vancouver. And then probably the big name that I'm circling, Wickelman Carmona from Red Bull New York on a transfer. I thought, oh, not transfer, actually, that was a trade, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
I,
it was
I
with
see
Jaquil
some,
Marsh-Rudy headed the other
yeah,
way.
I see some really talented names there. Which move do you feel has the highest potential out of everything there?
If we're talking pure potential, it's probably Wiggy Carmona, who's still 21 or 22 years old, who has a lot of promise and who's already shown really good things, both with his work rate and his ability to kind of get in between those lines as a 10. he was forced to play behind Emil Forsberg at Red Bulls, which is a very difficult position to be in if you're looking for minutes. It's just not going to happen. But in Montreal, it's a much more open discussion in that 10 spot, and he's made it his own. He had a fantastic game. He was a player of the week 2 weeks ago again with his brace against Red Bulls, and he had another really strong game against Orlando. The problem now is that at training he seems to have picked up an ankle injury. We don't know the extent of it. Is a non-contact injury too, which is just brutal. But so we're gonna wait for an update. We don't even know. It happened less than 24 hours ago, so I'm assuming they're still running tests on it and they're kind of seeing the extent. But he hobbled off the pitch and he didn't practice for the rest of the session. So hopefully it's nothing too serious, but I don't know if he'll be available for Cincinnati. But that's definitely the pickup with the most potential. On top of that, Dagger Dan Torhausen, I think is known across MLS for just being a reliable, very, very solid player at multiple positions, and he's already done that in Montreal. He's played 4 different positions already at the club, 5 if you want to get into the tactical technicalities of it, and he's been excellent at all of them. So I think that he's probably been the best acquisition. And the two of them together are some real savvy. Again, the Montreal has proven themselves to be very good at interim MLS trades and acquisitions, and these two hopefully are just another in a long list of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of names I think that really could come together and form, I think, a solid unit as they go through. The Jersey Swap podcast is also sponsored by Beyond Exercise. Beyond Exercise is a Cincinnati physical therapy and fitness business that helps people of all ages stay active and fit. They also work with local MLS and MLS Next Pro athletes, and they're the official physical therapy provider of the Manu Ledesma Academy UPSL team. See how they can elevate your health and fitness at gobeyondexercise.com. So let me bring up what the lineup actually looked like last time. Thorolson was on the right there, and right next to him is a name I do want to bring up, Tomas Aviles, who is on loan from Inter Miami. When that came through, I thought it made sense for both sides, but I do want to get your perspective on it, since I think Aviles has the potential to be both constructive but also a detriment. We saw the red card from match day 1. Does the D look better with him on working the right center back?
So this is the formation, except for Sinchuk being swapped in for Jaime. This is basically the formation that they played Red Bulls with. But if you watch the Orlando game, this is not the formation at all. In fact, Torhausen played on the left wing, and Aviles played at right back in a 4-2 in a 4-2-3-1.
Oh,
And
really? Okay.
yeah, that was my reaction, because Thomas Aviles is not a right back. This is a club now that went out and got Dango Torhausen. They got Bodhi Hidalgo halfway through last season from Real Salt Lake. They have 4 right backs at the club now, and they're opting to play a center back at right back. And so he got exposed completely. Both goals were on his side, and he looked a little bit lost, which is understandable for a new player to be playing out of position in a completely different system. And so I hope that that's the last we'll see of that kind of shape, because the shape that FOTMob and most other apps picked, which is this 5-back, makes a lot more sense when you have someone like Dango Torhausen available. But he's been training on the right side again this week, so hopefully that's a return to this kind of shape. But yeah, against Orlando, it was very odd, and it was a big swing. It did not come off, and they took a 2-1 loss home because of it.
I was about to bring this up. I mean, I know that looking at the system that was played in 2025, it typically was a 4-3-3 defending shape, and then they switched to that 3-4-2-1 or 5-4-1 shape for Red Bull, and I think they tried to fit the things into that formation then. So I guess, do you feel that you will see the 5-4-1 more often now, considering that it produced that 3-0 victory at Red Bull?
I think with Ivan Jaime being healthier, it's going to now, kind of lock up that left-sided position, which means that if Dango Torhausen is playing, it's either going to be as a right back or as a right winger, which means just naturally he's going to be covering a lot more ground on the right-hand side. So if they do go again with this three center back formation, even if Thomas Aviles is playing, a bit more to the right, it will effectively be defending in a five back. After the game against Red Bulls, Marco Donadel was talking about how Aviles played right back. And Tarhausen played as a winger, but at the same time, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, Tarhausen was playing right wing back, in my eyes at least. You look at his heat map and it's corner flag to corner flag. So I think that, I don't think we're going to see Tarhausen on the left and Aviles or any other center back playing right back at the same time, because I think, I hope that he learned his lesson and that, it didn't really come out what was expected. Maybe they'll try something else at home when they have more of the ball and it's a bit more settled. But I think it was a big swing and a miss against Orlando.
Yeah, well, let's if Orlando was a swing and the miss, you can at least say that you got a 3-run homer out of a game against Red Bull.
Yeah.
Maybe we can look back at that and if that was a similar formation, what do you feel worked in that match that can be replicated?
It was a much more pragmatic approach to the game, not just in the lineup, which everyone played in their natural position, but everyone's this Marco Donadel system, which is heavily inspired by man to man, but it's not as strict as maybe something you'd see in the Premier League, where it's really just like everyone is stuck to everyone. It's a very complex system, and the second one person is a bit out of shape or one person loses a duel, this house of cards crumbles. And then you're getting counters, you're getting odd 2-on-1s or 3-on-2s in specific areas of the park, and it's just a nightmare. And we saw that a lot of that in the first two games of the season. That's why they were lost an aggregate of 8-0 over the first two games. Now Red Bulls was entirely different. It wasn't nearly as aggressive. They were much more composed and much better organized at the back. And I think that one of the main reasons was everyone's role was simplified. Everyone had much more conventional responsibilities. And you also take a look at Efraim Morales, who was in the heart of that defense, and he completely locked up Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, who was an absolute non-factor. And again, as amazing as Emil Forsberg is, his danger lies in his ability to combine and make other people shine. And when you take out the biggest threat, which is Choupo-Moting as that striker up top, it makes his life infinitely more difficult. And he had to rely on some shots from outside the penalty area. And then when you're focused only on defending shots from outside the area and not really what's going on in your penalty area, your life as a defender and as a defensive group become infinitely easier. It also helps with the fact that Red Bulls effectively gifted them 2 goals with a terrible penalty at the beginning of the game that you kind of just lash your leg out, you trip up Ivan Jaime, and it's a free penalty. And then on top of that, that third goal was just may as well scored on his own net with that pass, because Wiki Carmona intercepts it immediately and he's left basically with a free penalty shot from 10 yards out, and he makes no mistake. And the second goal was a very well worked set piece. It was a bit of trickery, and that was nice. But when teams are actively putting you in positions to score and give you free goals, obviously you're going to look much better. And when you defend like that, you hit a 3-1 homer, like you said.
Yeah. Let's take a look, I guess, how this lineup could look like on Sunday. For those listening on the podcast, we're seeing Prince Owusu up top, Sinchuk, Longstaff, Loturi, and Carmona as your midfield sort of stick there. Luca Petrasso, Brian Vera, Efraim Morales, Thomas Aviles, and Thorolson. Help me with the goalkeeper's name, Gillier? Gillier. I am horrible with French. I'm sorry, man. Now taking the place for Jonathan Shirowa back there. Do you feel that this, you had mentioned Carmona picked up a little bit of that knock, might not be available on Sunday. Do you expect to see this type of setup, or how would you shake it up if Carmona was not available?
So again, this is kind of going off of what we saw in training as well, but finally they're training with right backs at right back, which is like, oh my God, it's about time. But Torhausen was playing a bit further up the pitch, and people like David Bugay or Bodi Hidalgo were occupying the right-hand spot. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they go with a regular 4-2-3-1, given that Ivan Jaime will most likely be starting because he didn't start against Orlando. Sinchuk is in excellent form, and he may end up playing in that 10 role instead of out on the right if Torhausen steps up and Longstaff, Latourie. There's also Samuel Piet who's in the mix for that. The three of them have very similar, kind of play styles and maybe different profiles and different tendencies. But again, they're hardworking, ball winning, box to box midfielders. Samuel Piet is a bit more of a pivot, but again, they kind of function in similar spaces. And so Prince Owusu again, Prince Owusu and Tamajili, the nine and the goalkeeper, are the only two really undisputed starters. Fit, they're 100% there. The back line is actually where it's most interesting because as much as I like the acquisition of Brian Vera, as much as I think as Thomas Aviles has a lot of potential, and as much as I think that Efraim Morales is the future of this back line, none of the three of them have done anything to, make themselves undisputable starters. And Jalen Neal is waiting in the wings, who is fit and ready and hungry and, I think deserves a real shot. He came off at halftime against Chicago, but to be fair, everyone was horrible against Chicago. So it's not really I don't blame the tactics. I don't blame a single individual. The entire team, starters and subs, were horrifying. And so I think that, based on the last two games since then, Jalen Neal should get a start. I think he's earned it. He's been training really well. And I think that, the three that are on your screen now have not done enough to keep him out of the lineup. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw at least a minor tweak of the back line. Luca Petrasso has proven again to be just a solid corner fly to corner fly left back. And a 4-2-3-1 with a similar kind of aggression, especially for a team that's played 3 games in a week, would not surprise me.
Yeah, that would be a good setup. I think Jalen Neal's only played about 50 minutes this year. He used to be considered like one of the futures for U.S. Defending line there. I haven't really seen him in the past 2 weeks. He's been left on the bench for both games. Be interesting to see if he becomes an X factor, but maybe do you have a particular X factor in mind in this game? I mean, this is going to be the 5th out of 5 road games for Montreal before they finally can head home and have some.
There's one more after this.
There is one more after. Oh boy,
they're headed to New England. Yeah, it's never ending. Boy. It feels like it's never going to end, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
So who would you consider to be an X factor in this match?
It's got to be Ivan Jaime. He's your designated player. He, it's not a surprise that the second you see him on the ball, you're like, oh, this is by far and away the best player on the team. Technically, his mentality, the way he attacks people, the way he combines everything, is at another level. And there's a reason he's got the designated player tag. Getting him isolated in one-on-one situations is going to be super important. It's going to open up space for Owusu. It's going to open up space for whoever's playing in that 10 spot. And now it's more just a question of, can you be effective in the middle of the park to actually make, Jaime or Sinchuk on either side, their 1v1 proficiency pay off? Because against Orlando, that was the thing. Sinchuk was fantastic 1v1 on the right. Jaime, when he came on with half an hour left, was unplayable on the left. And there's only so much you could do from there before you need people in the middle of the park that can put the finishing touch on it, and it wasn't there. So therein lies, the real, maybe the area of the field that's the X factor. But as a player, it's got to be Ivan Jaime. He has to show up and he has to be a starter, I think.
Yeah. We'll see how much time he gets in this. He hasn't really played a full 90 this year.
He has not. He hasn't played more than 70 minutes since he got to the club in the summer.
Okay, so we'll see how their 10 matches up against our 10. I am a little concerned about our team. I think a lot of the gas got taken out of the tank just the past week or so. But if there's any team that they really could use a bounce back performance against, it would be Montreal. I mean, there were a few 5-4 matches I remember in the past that Montreal managed.
There's never a dull moment with these teams.
Just squeak by against us. Last time it was a 3-0 win at the end of the season. Frankly, both teams I don't think really needed the win as much as they just needed some momentum. How do you see this matchup finishing out on Sunday?
There's a saying that it's never a bad time to play CF Montreal. They've made it a habit of, even when they were, in 2022, when they were like the second best team in the league, Sporting KC comes to TQL Stadium and gets a 1-0 win, right? So, this has been a thing forever where, even Orlando, who were rock bottom and hadn't won a game yet, barely scored a goal, they play CF Montreal and they've got their first one of the season. So, Cincinnati has to be looking at this as an opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised. I think every team that plays against Montreal sees that as an opportunity, especially while they're still vulnerable. I think over the last year and a half, they are extremely beatable. But at the same time, they're learning to become difficult to play against, and they're learning to kind of sharpen their own tools, which is one of the things that I wanted them to do this season, was to kind of grow offensively and become aware of how they can use the talented weapons they have effectively in the final third. Now they've scored, they scored in the last 2 games, which again is not a crazy accomplishment. But when you look at how they started the season last year, start the parade, I still think it's going to be a very difficult challenge because, again, we talk about those games last season. Last season was one of the only times where I feel that Montreal was completely outplayed. Like, there were levels. Montreal lost a lot of games last year, but they were never out of it. They were never outplayed. They were never played off the pitch. Against Cincinnati, especially when Evander was getting in his bag, it was a different level. So again, Cincinnati absolutely has the weapons to hurt Montreal, and now it just depends on what version of Montreal shows up.
And really what version of FC Cincinnati shows up. I think the version we've seen the past week is not the version that we were sold on coming into this season. It was more the 2-0 victory that we saw against Atlanta. Hopefully coming back home gives the team a little bit more focus, a little bit more clarity, and hopefully some support from the fans. I'm going to predict a win for Cincinnati. I'm not going to say it's a blowout or a close game at all. I think right now a win is what they need more than anything. Any predictions from your end?
I see it going very similarly to the Orlando game, where Cincinnati come out on top. Montreal have their opportunities, but there's still that final play in the final third to kind of break down any kind of stubborn defense that Montreal still haven't found a way to work through.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. That's why they play the game. Right now, my coffee cup is empty, so I think we'll consider that a wrap for this early morning recording. I want to give the floor to you as well, though. Tell us all about where we can find you and where what the Ball is Round is doing lately.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the show, we are live every Monday at 7 p.m. We're covering 3 professional football clubs as well as both sides of the national team picture. Lots of stuff going on. There's always moving parts, and anyone who knows Montreal knows there's never a dull moment, be it on or off the field. And of course, we also have a Patreon where we do a lot more writing. We do some analysis. We do practice notes when we go to practice, which is quite often for all 3 teams, especially now that both 2 of them are in training camp. And personally, I also write for the Canadian Press for CF Montreal, so there's previews, recaps, and the odd feature in there as well.
Okay, and also check them out on their X account, TBIR Montreal. They have their podcasts every week, just like we do as well. Let's bring this to a close. Hopefully both of us can get to this international break and give ourselves a little bit of some breathing room. But I do want to thank you for joining me as early Friday morning cup of coffee. On behalf of myself, on behalf of Elias, make sure you listen to more soccer. Consume. Go to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Check us out on our social media sites at Cincy Soccer Talk. We're on X. We're on IG. We're on Blue Sky. We're on Facebook. I'm sure there's, if we had a live journal account, we'd have that same stem as well. And definitely listen to, on your podcast stations. Apple works for us. I'm sure it works for a lot of people as well as others. On behalf of everybody here, and make sure you keep your kit clean, and let's go for another 90 minutes on Sunday. Thank you very much for joining us, Elias.
Thank you for having me.